as well. And Miss Sheena Katz, hello, how are you? Are you unmuted yet? Desi's going to unmute you. So we have everyone being unmuted. There you go. I think she should be unmuting you right now. So let's unmute Sheena, please. Thank you. We're just doing that for all of our reasons that we have everyone muted. But I'd like to welcome you back to this, Speak Up and Show Up show. And let me tell you a little bit about Sheena. So she started the branding tables of Netflix and Sony and A&E and History Channel and Peacock and all the things. She is the co-host of an incredible show. Now, I read it, and if I don't say this correctly, I know that you'll correct me. Is it Philippines in Wellness, a podcast spotlighting Filipino health and wellness? If not, you're going to correct me on that. But before you do, I'm going to tell people that you're going to be talking to us today about the evolution of branding, or the evolution of branding. Let's do that today on International Women's Day. The thing that you may not know about Sheena is that she is obsessed with all things French. With all things French, that's awesome. And the music she's listening and rocking out to right now is the best of Tina Turner. Oh my gosh, I'm sure some people were listening to her today. And for someone is going to win, when you listen to win, an incredible, beautiful private branding session with her that is valued at $800. So welcome to the show, sister.
Thank you so much, Deb, and thank you for having Renee go before me. I'm so still and present now. But actually,
Awesome.
I wanted to make a quick switch. So I know I was originally going to talk about branding, but I think today I want to talk about joy, and not just any joy, but pursuing joy unapologetically.
Right on.
So
Let's
first
do it.
off, it's such an honor to be here on International Women's Day, even though I'd argue every day is International Women's Day. So thank you for allowing me the space. So joy. I decided to talk about it because, I feel like in a world that usually asks us to shrink, to compromise, to fit into a mold that was never really made for us, choosing joy is probably one of the most radical and courageous things we can do as women. So let's dive in. I want to take you guys through my journey, my life story, career, passion, purpose, all those things. But mostly, I want to talk about how I've learned to embrace joy without guilt, without hesitation, and without apology. So I was born in North Africa to Filipino parents, and much of my upbringing was spent in Los Angeles, California, which is where I met Deb. And the blend of cultures, the melting pot of experiences around me really shaped who I am. It taught me adaptability, resilience, and a deep appreciation for diversity. And unfortunately, though, like many of you guys, you gals, sorry about that. I grew up absorbing the message that the world had about success. Work hard, get a good job, make a lot of money, be grateful, all the things. I did all of that. I checked off all the boxes. But somewhere along the way, I noticed joy and happiness was part of that equation. Everything was about achieving and unlocking another level of success, but no box to be checked about being happy. But regardless, for about 17 years, I worked hard to put a burnout in the corporate, entertainment, and media space. I was lucky to collaborate with some Fortune 500 companies. And as an executive, like you mentioned, I represented some of the big entertainment brands like NBC, A&E, BBC, and TV at one point. On paper, I had a successful career and I built a name for myself. And also something, like many of you, I'm sure at one point I was thinking I was achieving, but am I thriving? I was excelling, but am I actually happy? And it took the global pandemic, which is the ultimate form of stillness, one of the most uncertain, isolating, and revealing times of our lives, to finally force me to pause. Like many of you, I had to sit with myself, no distractions, no busy schedules to drown out the noise. And in that stillness, I had to face something that I had been avoiding, which is, what do I actually want? What brings me joy? And this period of reflection led me to ask even more crucial questions that I think we all do, which is, if our time here is limited, what am I doing in it? And what am I doing here? And that was really the beginning of my transformation. I realized that joy isn't something you stumble on, it's something that you actively choose. So I chose to make a change. I decided to lean into a life and professional pursuits that align more with my passions, which at its core is the empowerment of underrepresented communities. That meant mapping out my exit from the corporate world, which for me, realistically, took about 3 years of planning because I wanted to make sure I was in a good place financially when I finally left. I also started freelance consulting, leading into minority-led startups and female-led startups because as a minority and female myself, it feels good to support underrepresented voices. And I also became the co-owner of Vital Force, a sportswear brand dedicated to female strength athletes. And that in itself is a game changer. I've spent many years watching women in sports be overlooked, their needs unmet, the power underestimated. So it's time to make that change, and I'm proud to have a small hand in supporting the movement. I also stepped into mentorship and service. I serve on the board of the 4S Education Foundation. It's a nonprofit organization uplifting young people pursuing higher education. And I co-host Philippine X in Wellness. It's a podcast that, as Deb mentioned, explores the Filipino community and our wellness being. And through all these new ventures, I realized that I'm no longer just kind of working, I'm finally living, right? Which is what we all want to do. And I think that's the thing about joy, because once you choose it, it overflows into pretty much everything else. And let's be real, pursuing joy is unapologetically is not exactly easy. If it were, more people would be doing it. As women, we're taught to be everything to everyone else: caregiver, the nurturer, the support system. We're told to be ambitious, but not too ambitious, be confident, but not intimidating, take up space, but not too much space. I don't even know what that means. But joy is usually treated as a luxury. It's something that you get after you've checked off all the boxes, after you've succeeded, after you sacrifice. It's almost like you have to earn it, right? Which we all know is not true. We
Oh,
all know that you don't need permission to be happy. You do not need to justify your dreams. You do not owe the world an explanation for your choices. You definitely don't need a big fancy career or a booming business to feel worthy. So I want to challenge anyone listening today to really relook at success and what that means to you today. And whatever that is it actually bringing you joy? And the real question is, what does happiness look like for you if no one else is mattered? It's a hard question. And I want to leave with three powerful steps to really start living life filled with unapologetic joy. No, it doesn't mean leaving a nearly 2 decades long career like I did to pursue my passions, although if that's your jam, more power to you. These are more simple reminders that I wanted to share today to make sure that you're actually living the best life right now. Reminder number one: own your narrative. Take ownership of your past, your struggles, your victories, and shape them into something that fuels you. For me, it was supporting underrepresented communities because I myself belong to that community, right? And that's why I love doing that. Reminder number two: prioritize what feeds your soul. Make time for the things that light you up without guilt, whether it's travel, movement, creative expression, time with loved ones. These are not distractions from life, they are life. As an example, for me, it's very clear that my multicultural background shaped who I am as a human. So a lot of my genuine interest comes from a very global perspective, which means I travel as much as possible. And even when I'm home, I try to seek out different cultural activities that I can participate in because the joy that brings is immeasurable. And finally, reminder number three: surround yourself with the right people. Your circle matters. Be around people who uplift you, who encourage your joy, who remind you that you're capable and worthy. And we're already here, thanks to Deb. So we're already doing that. Thank you, Deb. So, we're often told to fight for equality, right? To break the glass ceiling, to push for representation. And yes, all of those things are important. And also, a joyful woman is a revolutionary woman. When we embrace joy, we refuse to let the world define our worth by its standards. We define it for ourselves. So today, of all days, I encourage you to choose joy. Not later, not when it's convenient, not when you've earned it. Choose it now. choose it always, choose it unapologetically, because happiness is a revolution. When you choose joy, you give others permission to do the same thing. And thank you so much for having me here today.
Oh my goodness. This is turning into a massive love fest and I love it. I love it. We are all